before this previous weekend, the 5 losses your team had, a total combined losses by 7 total runs in those 5 games. This past weekend against Washington, things got a little bit out of hand. Talk to the importance of keeping it close and giving your team a chance to fight back later in ball games.
Yeah, you nailed that. I think in every game but the 2 games here last weekend, which were clunkers from our perspective, and certainly non-competitive once they took the lead, and some of it was our doing and a lot of it was their doing. Once they separated themselves from us, unfortunately we weren't very competitive with our at-bats, and the desire was there, but there wasn't a lot of examples of quality of at-bats. In fact, on Friday we had 10 negative at-bats in a row, and basically went 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, with the exception of 1 inning in Saturday's game. So, and then it just got worse and worse from the pitching perspective and defense. So I don't know where that came from. We'd been playing offense pretty well, and even in the victory that we had, I didn't think we were as consistent offensively on Sunday, and found a way to win that with great pitching and the Walker, Nelson, and Teleshay combination. So first and foremost, I think we need that consistency back on the mound. Baseball is a sport that the runs are going to come and go based on who's pitching against us, and sometimes you hit in bad luck and you don't get the breaks that you need to extend an inning and maybe get an extra out or 2 in the inning, and so that's a little bit cyclic. But the thing that hopefully we can count on as we move forward is getting that pitching back in order, and some consistency there with the defense behind it.
Do you think not having a midweek game coming into this series will help with that, or do you think having a midweek game would benefit you in that situation?
I think it was a good week because we're in finals. I don't know if that had anything to do with last weekend. I would think that for some it did. As many know, dead week's not so dead for a student athlete. There's a lot of papers due, a lot of finals are given under the guise of something else in that dead week, and then getting ready for finals at the end of the quarter. Our guys really put a lot of emphasis on their academic efforts, thank goodness, and we welcome that. So sometimes it takes the edge off, and I don't know. I'm not really looking for excuses. I thought it was a good week not to have a game because of finals. Today we're actually going to do some of our bench players versus our extended bullpen in some live at bats. So without it threatening, in baseball it's hard because it's not a re-entry thing. In football you can put a guy in and take him out if things aren't going so well. In basketball and in baseball you're a little more reluctant to do that because it possibly could cost you a game. So in this case we try to put pressure on them for results to see what it would look like in a real game and get their timing and so forth. So I think it'll sharpen some guys in the bullpen and sharpen some of our bench guys up, because our bench play wasn't quite as good as it's been last weekend as it was earlier in the year as well.
Heading into the second Pac-12 series for you guys, obviously also having that one non-conference game against OSU, just how competitive is this conference already, first of all?
Well, here's a team that's undefeated, and we weren't even talking about them in the preseason, Arizona State, and have arguably one of the better hitters in the country in Torkelson, and he's a threat, certainly. He looks like a man already in the batter's box as a sophomore, and you look at their numbers and they're unbelievable. It's just an example of ho-hum, another great, well-coached Pac-12 team for another weekend. So it's part of the fun of being involved in the Pac, but it's also part of the gauntlet and the difficulty that you better show up each and every weekend. And we felt pretty good about ourselves going against the Huskies, and they came in here and really had their way with us in the first 2 games. So hopefully for our guys that are first experience in the Pac-12, they understand now what we talk about when they hone up their skills and practice at a championship level, because there's no question that Pac-12 baseball is a championship level.
And speaking of Torkelson, obviously last season, him being a freshman, being up there in home runs at that, obviously this season, he's not going to sneak up on anyone. What's sort of your scouting report on him?
Well, they got a guy named Bishop that's got 10 home runs, and they're talking about him as a Golden Spikes candidate, and here's a guy that is very toolsy. Besides just hitting, I'm talking about Bishop now. He's an excellent runner, an excellent thrower, and a tremendous player. And I think has really improved from one year to the next. And what our charge will be to tackle and go head to head with a very confident team, confident as a team, being undefeated and winning a lot of close games, but also talented in the way that their numbers are crazy. They've played all but one game at home, which certainly is an advantage, and the offensive numbers in Arizona with a shortened fence is a little different than it's been, but they're playing Division I teams, so certainly they're a force to be reckoned with, and we're going to have to play the game consistently at a very high level to compete with them.
And speaking of home field advantage, obviously you guys get your first 2 Pac-12 series at home. How is that, just to help the team out, build some confidence being in front of your home crowd?
Yeah, you would hope so, and I think for a young team, we start 4 or 5 freshmen. The confines of PK Park probably make them feel a little more comfortable, although we've been in the Lions' Den a little bit at Texas Tech and at Goss, and Hawaii's a very hostile environment. The Hawaiians like to have a few alcoholic beverages, and they get after you a little bit, and so that's part of the deal. That's part of the fun, and we're here in front of our home crowd and our home confines, so it has a tendency to make you feel a little comfortable. But then when teams play well against you, that makes you uncomfortable. So we're just gonna have to play the game better than we did last weekend, quite frankly.